Hey, welcome to Fans of the Forge. We are here recording on a weekend, which is a little different for us because we have a special interview, our first international interview.
Oh, that's right.
Pretty incredible. But to start things off, I'm Chris. To my right we have
Teresa.
To my left we have
I'm Sean.
And calling in via Skype, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Craig from Chop Knives and from the Knife Talk podcast.
So we've been talking with you for a while now, ever since we kind of started getting some shout-outs on your show and then doing some stuff with Morocco and the Dragon's Breath guys, and then we inserted ourselves in with Fader and got a nice interview with him. And
I'm the last host to be interviewed. I get it.
It's the last one, but
I'm fine with that.
It completes the trifecta here.
It's transatlantic. This isn't easy to do.
We've got special satellites, in place. A lot of effort gone into this.
So first things first, congratulations on your 2 new babies.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you see the bags under my eyes there?
Well, that's the next question. Are you getting any sleep?
We're getting sleep, but when they're awake, they're just so demanding. We wouldn't want it any other way, but we literally can't leave their side. So they're now 12, 13 weeks old, and I can count the number of days I've had in the shop on 2 hands.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty bad. Myself and my wife both work from home.
Okay.
And we thought that would be great. We'll just have the babies and be able to do some work as and when. But yeah, there's times when we wish we could go out to work to have a little break,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Teresa and I have 2 kids ourselves who are upstairs watching a Disney movie right now. Yeah. Keep them occupied. Luckily, they're a little older and can sit there and not kill each other.
Hopefully.
How old are they?
3 and 6.
Oh, right. Okay. So still young. Young.
Yeah.
Nice.
You want to take the first question?
Sure. How long have you been making knives?
About 6 years. I'd say the last 2 years sort of full-time professionally. The first couple of 100 knives they're stuck in a drawer somewhere. They'd never see the light of day. But I'd say it probably took about 4 years till I was happy enough to make a knife that I could sell. And I just got that bug. So if we go right back, my background is sort of software development and web stuff. But I've always been a maker, just making stuff. So, when I wasn't in front of the screen, I'd have a soldering iron out on an Arduino or something. I'd be hacking something together, just making. As part of my role then as a developer, my wife and I also put on some sort of developer conferences, that kind of thing. And we did that for years. And, they've got quite big, up to sort of 2,000 developers in big auditoriums. It was a big international thing.
Oh, wow.
But they just became the same, as much as people say tech is changing so quickly, it's the same every year. It's always the same. Always the same people, always have the same stories to tell. So one year I did a retreat kind of conference. So these were for web developers and software developers, but we took them out into the woods and we booked these various people to teach us new skills. And one was making a wooden spoon. We did an axe making thing. We did all these things. And from that point on, I just sort of lost all interest in computer stuff, really. It was quite strange. It was just, well, geez, I'm getting much more enjoyment out of this. Mm-hmm. And then I went down that whole rabbit hole. So you jump on YouTube and you see somebody, making a spoon, then you suggested something else. I stumbled across Walter Sorrell's videos. Mm-hmm. Which are just incredible. That I love them. And that was it. I was like, right, I'm going to make a knife. And then it all starts. You get that sickness. You make the first knife, then it can be so much better the next time and so on. You keep making and making. And it's led me to, becoming a full-time knife maker.
Do you still have that first knife?
I do. The very first knife, it's quite silly of me, really. I jumped straight into making kitchen knives. And for the knife makers out there that know it, they're not really the easiest thing to start with because obviously they're very, very thin edges. But I've still got it. It's almost like a scalpel. It's been ground down so many times to be resharpened, and I still use it every single day.
Oh, nice.
It's really beat up, but I still use it every day. So yeah, it's a nice reminder sometimes to pick that up and go, geez, that's a load of crap. But you get better with every knife. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about was your Indiegogo campaign that you kind of used to start Chop, right? Is that how that worked out?
No, not really. So
okay, I'm completely wrong. Sorry.
Chop has been going for probably about 2.5 years.
Okay.
As a sort of a legal business kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Legal, not illegal.
Yes.
As a legal business. And it's difficult sometimes to establish it yourself to sell knives because, a handmade knife takes a lot of time and there's a certain price point to that. And it's quite difficult to sell them. So my thinking was, if I can take out the really dumb bits of knife making, which are your profiling, your shaping, get that done by a water jet, and I can concentrate on the grinds and the finish and the handling, that kind of thing, I could reduce my costs massively. So the whole idea of the Indiegogo campaign was to get a bunch of steak knives cut out, laser cut out, and be able to sell them, sub €100, which was the goal.
Okay.
And it did very well, actually. So the actual campaign itself, it didn't do amazingly well, didn't storm off the shelves. But what it did do was get the notice of a lot of restaurants. And they were then contacting me saying, well, look, we want these knives, but we don't particularly want to go through Indiegogo because they were aware of the charges of Indiegogo.
Right.
Plus, they wanted some sort of guarantee. Everybody's aware, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, you don't really have any sort of guarantee. So I had sort of formal orders then come from restaurants of sort of 80, 120 knives, that kind of thing. So it really established me, very quickly and gave me a year's worth of work, which I'm really grateful for. So yeah, it's a different way of doing things, but it seemed to have really worked out for me.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was listening to Knife Talk yesterday, the episode where Jeff interviewed you, just to kind of hear a little bit more of your backstory. And so it was funny hearing his reaction to the whole thing. I know it was probably almost a year ago now that you guys recorded that, but how shocked he was by the whole process that you went through to do that. But it turned out great. So that's pretty cool.
Yes, yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned Jeff then, actually, because the show, I don't know if any of your fans of your show listen to Knife Talk too. It was a very, very different show before Jeff came in. Mm-hmm. So it started off, and again, it was just this thing. I wanted to learn more. I get these really sort of itchy feet when I get into something. I really need to, take everything apart and learn as much as I can about it. I get quite obsessive about things. So I thought, well, how can I get to speak to great makers? I thought, well, I'll do some sort of podcast. So really lucky. We got Walter Soros as the first guest, or Alex Steele as the second. And we had, these great guests. Mm-hmm. And really, it's just a way for me to drill them and get information from them so I can get better. But after, I think I'd done about probably 20, 25 shows. And I was finding, because it was just myself, I mean, there's three of you guys, so you obviously spread the load a bit. Yeah. I was finding that I was just asking the same questions every week, and I just wasn't enjoying it as much.
Right.
So I'd already interviewed Jeff and Mareko in the past, and we had some sort of chemistry. We got on, we had fun. So I invited them to join me as hosts, and the show was just completely changed. It's a completely different show now. The audience has just skyrocketed. And we have fun. I really look forward to it. We do it every week. We record every weekend. Goes live every Monday. And we just have lots of fun. So we have lots of audience participation. Can't speak today. And it's just always good fun. So we get, the audience asking us questions. We take tips from them as well. And again, I'm still learning every week because, I get to speak with Jeff and, the great Mareko every week. So it's great for me. And as I say, it's something that I really enjoy.
So I've gotten quite a bit out of listening to your guys' podcast because, I'm very early on in the whole blacksmithing, bladesmithing kind of hobby here, working on getting a workshop together, that sort of thing. But just listening to your guys' conversations about what's going on in your shop and some of the issues you come across or some of the good things that happen in your shop, it helps, it's just building my knowledge before I can even really get in there and do a whole lot of hammering and that sort of thing. So it's very informative, and I'm sure we share a lot of people that watch our stuff probably already are listening to you guys. But if you're not, you should check out Knife Talk because it's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say it's just a great way for me to learn stuff. And it amazes me the sort of community that we've sort of tapped into. Because, we're all trying to sell our work, whether you want to call ourselves artists or smiths or whatever we are. We want to sell our work, but we're also willing to help each other out too. I can't imagine, plumbers having, a wrench talk podcast where they all help each other out, But we do, and it's great. I really love it. We get so much feedback every week in our sort of DMs and so on. People giving us tips. They've heard us say something we're struggling with, and they're helping us. There's obviously the forum then on the website as well, and that's pretty active. So, yeah, it's great to sort of tap into that community and just see. I mean, we're having people who are sort of meeting, thanks to the forum, and they're working on projects together and that kind of thing. So it's really fun, really fun.
I think Toilet Talk could take off as a plumber's podcast.
Yeah,
I feel like that might go a completely different direction.
Quite possibly.
I don't know. I mean, people might think it's a certain thing when it's not.
Yeah. A lot of people be really disappointed, I think.
Yeah, they won't be trading wrench tips. There'll be something else going on.
One other thing, the quiz show segment that you guys have been doing has been awesome. I've been loving hearing you guys compete. It's really good.
It's been fun. It's been fun. So we tried to have a different section each week because, it can, just for us really to keep us, amused and that kind of thing. So I said to the guys, I said, look, get something that you can use as a buzzer next weekend. This was a few weeks ago. So they had an inkling there was going to be a quiz. So we just laid the quiz on them and we had fun. And we've done it 3 times now. So we've all been host and the other 2 pitted against each other. But we're going to do an episode where the 3 of us, we have a guest host coming in who's going to be the host of the quiz. So that's going to be fun. So we'll be up against each other. But, it's just a way for us to have some laughs, really.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially at Jeff's expense.
Normally is, yeah. It was either the quiz or keep doing complaints each week.
Oh, yeah.
We get complaints every single week, which we love because the way I look at it is if everybody's happy, it's going to be pretty boring. We want to sort of rattle a few cages a bit.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. We've had a little bit of issues with complaints as well recently, but we're not going to get into that. We don't need to get into our YouTube comments. So why don't we move on to the next question?
Okay. So do you have a preferred knife making method like stock removal versus forging? And do you still have the Devil Forge?
I still have a Devil Forge. I don't use it anymore. I use it just for little fun projects. But all my knives are 100% stock removal. And in fact, the lower end, I've got a couple here. So these are, for example, the steak knives that we did for the Indiegogo campaign. Okay. They're still my biggest seller. But I mean, these aren't even stock removal. These were laser cut. Hence the ridges out. So I suppose it's stock removal in a way that I'm still doing the bevels and that sort of thing. So these are the sort of lower end, the cheaper end of the scale. But then going up to chef knives, a standard sort of 8-inch chef knife, all 100% stock removal. A couple of reasons for that. Well, the first one is I don't have the skills to do a full integral knife. It's just something that I've never even tried. But I struggled when I first started to find my place in the market. And I think that's why the podcast works, actually, because myself, Jeff, and Mareko, the 3 of us have sort of different tiers in the market. Mareko is obviously very, very high end. Yep. Jeff is, it's still very, very high quality and a reasonable cost. And my goal really is to do the best quality that I can, but still sort of affordable for people, Right. So, for example, a chef knife of mine will be about $300. I mean, no corners are cut. But I think over time, as things develop and I develop more skills, maybe the price will go up. But that's just where I am in the market at the moment. That's what I can charge. That's what works for me. But yeah, all stock removal, 100%.
Cool. Do you have a favorite blade style or design you like to make?
Yes, I'm not a fan of Japanese style knives, and I know there'll be fads and that kind of trends throughout time. But traditional sort of German style or even French style, Western style chef knives are my sort of thing. So deep bellies, a curve to the belly, whereas obviously Japanese knife you're going to get a straight edge.
Right.
I just find that shape quite elegant. It's what I use personally. And that's what I use every day. That's what I got into, culinary knives, is because I love cooking. I'm in the kitchen, every day cooking. And my personal preference of a knife is a standard 8-inch sort of Western style chef knife. So that's what I make. And we get a lot of people on the show asking, what sort of style knife should I make? And we always say, make what you're going to use, because if you're not going to use it, you're not going to know if it's good.
Oh yeah.
I've made dozens of small tweaks to my knife because I'm using it every day. And I think, if you're just starting out knife making, make what if you go hunting, make a hunting knife. If you cook a lot, make a chef knife.
So you recently started posting more frequently on your YouTube channel. What was the thought process to start putting together more video content?
Yeah, a couple of reasons, really. The first one being is I'm not in the shop as much as I can be now because I've 2 little babies to be with. So my thinking is if I can just record something that I'm doing quickly, when I'm just sitting in the lounge with the babies, I can just be editing. It's something that I can do without making a lot of noise and making sparks. But the main reason, I suppose, is, the 3 of us, myself, Jeff, and Mareko, we get dozens and dozens of questions every week. And we don't mean to be rude, but sometimes we just can't answer them. Answer them all. So the whole point of these videos are I'm going to answer the most common questions that I'm always asked in a video, and that way I can just direct people them there. And it should stop the amount of messages that we're getting, so we can just get some more work done. That's the real purpose, I suppose.
When you did your corrosion test video, was there anything that was surprising in the results?
Yes, that the stainless wasn't stainless. It's stainless, but not stainless. I suppose it was no surprise that the ferric chloride would eat through the stainless as well.
Right.
But I'm not sure if you're aware in the US of Nyolox. It's quite big here in Europe. It's sort of, they call it a hybrid between a high carbon steel and a stainless steel.
Right.
I expect that to have much better properties at anti-corrosion than it did. It was pretty much the same as a 52-100 or like an 01 tool steel. It corroded in pretty much the same way.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty much marketing speak, really, when they're saying there's this brand new hybrid steel. It's just marketing stuff, really.
Do you have a favorite type of steel to use?
Yeah. All my carbon steel knives are 52-100. Simply because I think it gives a great edge. They give a lovely patina. They don't tend to rust so much, but instead they'll darken and they'll develop this sort of protective coating, if you like. I do things a little bit different to a lot of other knife makers that I know. So I won't grind a bevel, a cut-in bevel, until after heat treat. Whereas I know a lot of people will grind some rough bevels, heat treat it, quench it, and then they'll, after tempering, then they'll do the main grinding.
Right.
But as I said, I'm trying to make knives at a certain cost. So that means within a certain time frame. But I was spending a lot of time correcting warps, that kind of thing, if I was grinding before heat treat. So what I tend to do now is profile them, full heat treat, full temper before I do any sort of bevel grinds. That way I'm not getting any warps. I will go through a few more belts than if I were to do it the other way around, because obviously I'm grinding hardened steel.
Right. And
you need to be careful with with temperature, that kind of thing. But yeah, so sorry, back to the question. 52-100 for carbon steel. And if it's a stainless, I'm generally using the Sandvik steels, the Swedish steels, which are 14C28N and 12C27N, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Do you have a preference for handle material?
Wood, always wood for me. I just love the grain can be different in every single knife. I tend to have a range of knives that I do. So if you were to lay 10 out on the table, they'd be within the same range. But they'll be completely different because of the grain and the burls and so on. I do all my own stabilizing of wood as well. So sometimes I like to add dyes and that kind of thing. So you get these, these interesting patterns. I just find it works really well. And once they are stabilized, they're just as good as using G10 or micarta or whatever you may use.
Sure.
But I just find G10, and particularly micarta, just nasty, nasty things to work with. That dust is so toxic. Mm-hmm. You can get a lovely finish, especially on G10. And I know a lot of sort of professional butchery knives, especially here in Europe, they're not allowed to use natural materials such as wood or bone, that kind of thing. They can only use synthetic.
Okay.
But they aren't my customers, really. I don't supply to abattoirs, that kind of thing. So, yeah, wood for me, I just find it's beautiful. In all its forms, it can be so beautiful.
Did you ever end up making a knife that used the dehydrated tomato scales?
I didn't, but that was purely just, I've got them around somewhere. Here, not here. That was purely for a test. So I am doing some knives with beetroot in the handle. So the tomato was just a test on that. And it works exactly the same way. So you dehydrate your food first, so there's no moisture left at all.
Yep.
And then you just pour the resin over, and it obviously creates an airtight seal. The tomatoes, even now, they still look as they were freshly cut. So it seems to work. But no, I won't be using the tomatoes in a handle. But the beetroot looks very good because you just put a lot in. You can't really see there's a resin involved. It just looks like beetroot.
Oh, okay.
Cool. What is your favorite non-blade item to make?
Ooh, non-blade. I mean, this is probably going to go completely against the grain of your audience here. But it's electronics. I'm always making stuff with electronics and Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, that kind of thing.
Cool.
Oh, nice.
And I like to make things that I'll use, An example here, I'm going to spin you around very quickly.
Sure.
So I've got a beer fridge here in the shop.
Okay.
And I used an Arduino to make the controller for that. So I just dial in the kind of beer I'm going to make. It'll hold the temperatures. It'll set the right PSI for the gas and all those kind of things. So I like to make sort of practical things. So yeah, electronics. I'm generally always dabbling with a soldering iron.
And so you're a beer brewer as well?
I am. Yes.
Okay. I have a batch that we're working through right now, actually.
Really?
Yes.
Really? What is it?
It's like a Smithwick's Irish Red clone,
nice.
basically.
Very nice. I've just kegged up some Lemon Drop IPA.
Oh, wow.
And it went in the keg just 2 days ago, so it's still very fresh. And it's lovely. It's very good. Very nice.
So we always like to ask, Sean and I are getting involved in making knives, and we've done some work on our first knives. We've taken classes and worked with a couple people. What would be your best beginner's advice to somebody that wants to start making a knife?
I think it's a case of just take your time. What I was finding was I made a couple of knives and I thought, "Ooh, these are good," but I hadn't really seen any other handmade knives before. I saw commercial knives, obviously, that I was using every day. I made my first knives and I thought, these are great. And then, you start giving some to family and friends and that kind of thing. And it's sort of 6 months down the line when, the skill level ramps up massively. You just wish you could call back all those old knives. You're just embarrassed about these. Oh, no, I've got these knives out there and they got my name on it. So, my background is sort of, web stuff and software stuff where, you can always ship new code and it replaces the old stuff.
Right.
But with these physical items, they're out there and they're going to be out there for a long time. So what I'd say is really just take your time and just nail everything before you move on to the next. I tried to run before I could walk, basically.
Oh, okay.
So I've got a bunch of knives which I can look at and say that is so wrong, and I've repeated the same mistake over and over, rather than just say, right, I'm going to take, even if it takes me 3 months, I'm going to get this knife perfect. I was always trying to sort of cut steps, just because well, that's not quite right, but I'll finish this and the next one will be perfect. Where rather than go back and make sure that was perfect. And I think a lot of that is due to like myself, I basically learned how to make knives via YouTube, and we've got all these resources out there now to help us make stuff, and they're generally sort of 10-minute shots. They're just like 10 minutes done. And when I'm like 3 weeks into a build, I'm doing this wrong, surely, So, we're seeing people's best work in 10 minutes, thinking we can replicate that. So I think when I was starting, I wish somebody had just said to me, look, just slow down, make sure this is perfect, and then go on to the next one. You will get quicker over time, but, it's harder to get better. Just do it as well as you can, and the timing will become quicker.
Cool.
Gotcha. What
tool do you use most often?
The grinder, unfortunately. And again, that's going to piss off your audience. They all want me to say an anvil or my forge, but it's not. It's the grinder. I'd spent so much time at the grinder. I generally work in sort of small batches, do 4 or 5 knives at a time. And I've always got a bunch of knives at different stages. So some, be ready for heat treat. Some the next day they'll be ready to go for a temper. So I generally work in sort of month cycles of a bunch of knives, but everything is always within a process. I used to just, take one knife from beginning to end. But that's just not economical. When you start, using your belts on your grinder, and when you're using your even heat and so on, you need to fill that thing up really for it to become economical in the shop. Right. So yeah, unfortunately, it's the grinder. I spent a lot of hours standing there at the grinder with a mask on, finding it very difficult to breathe. But yeah, it is the grinder, unfortunately.
Is that your favorite tool to use, or just the one you use most often?
I love, I've got a Tormek, which I use for sharpening, and I love that just because it's the very last thing that you do. And to me, that's when it becomes a knife, because until then, I grind down to virtually a sharp edge anyway. Mm-hmm. When you put that final edge on and you cut through something, it's like, we're done. This is a knife. Yep. So it's always the Tormek. It's, I put on some music, light if you can. No, I don't. But I put on some music and I just sort of get into it, and spend a couple of hours doing a batch of knives. And it's just a nice thing to do. It's the end of the knife, in my opinion, then.
In the ever-changing world of Damascus patterns, do you have a favorite?
Well, I don't make Damascus in any way. Right. I've used other people's Damascus in the past, but I love like a raindrop Damascus with the circles, or a rosebud, as some people call it. I find that beautiful because you can look at it and it's different all the time. It can be quite trippy as well at times. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to patterns of Damascus, Mareko is the man for that kind of stuff. Seeing what he does, it just blows my mind. Yeah. Blows my mind.
Oh, yeah. We've gotten to see a couple of his pieces up close and personal, and it's like, damn. Like,
we're blown away, and he's like, that spot right there is wrong.
Yeah. He's very self-deprecating, Mareko, and, his work is so beautiful. But, yeah, he's never happy, which I think that's a good trait in any maker, that you want to be better every time. And that the current knife that he's making, he's using gold inlays as well on the darker parts of the Damascus.
Yeah, right.
It's going to be special, very special.
So, obviously, we started as a Forge and Fire podcast and then kind of branched out into interviews and some other things. Would you have any interest in going on a competition show like that, like Forge and Fire or Master of Arms?
Not me personally. I just find it strange. I'd love the idea of a show such as Forged in Fire, where it's all about the maker and they're there to promote the maker and promote, the art of making knives.
Right.
But it is what it is. It's entertaining, and that's what it's made to do. It's made to entertain. But I've spoken to so many people who've been on the show, not as many as you. You guys have spoken to them all. And, they're not really getting anything out of the show. They don't even have their names, put up on screen most of the time. Certainly not their surnames or their business name. And I think, if you're going to go on the show, it's going to take a few weeks out of your life. If you don't win, you're left with nothing. If you do win, you get, 10 grand, which, if that's taking a few weeks out of the shop, is it worth it? So I'd love to see a show which is a bit more about the maker and promoting the maker and, and promoting the skill of making knives or, bladesmithing. Because, they want the flames, they want the fire, they want people passing out because of the heat. It's because it's entertaining. And it is entertaining. I do watch and it's entertaining. But it's not really true to life of, the life of a knife maker. And, trying to make your best work in 3-4 hours is, it's always going to cause disasters.
Yeah. Yeah. We've seen it plenty of times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What is involved in making your own mosaic pins?
Vacuums. So I use a vacuum so much in this shop. It's quite bizarre. So I've got a number of vacuum pumps. So one will be for stabilizing wood. Another will be for the mosaic pins. And I mean, this is going out on video as well. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll try and explain as much via audio as I can as well. But I've actually got my mosaic bits here. So I take a brass rod, and this is a 6mm or 1/4 inch, near enough 1/4 inch for the American guys out there.
We don't have our make everything reference chart to check.
Yeah, Chris Zepp stickers. So yeah, I just take a brass pin, clean it up in acetone so it's completely clean. I then take a bunch of smaller rods, whether they're brass, copper, or stainless, and they go in. So you get a nice push fit. So you get the pattern that you require. And then you get your resin, whatever resin you may be using, and mix in a color. I only ever use black, so I use iron oxide as a coloring.
Okay.
Mix that up. And I suck it through with a vacuum very, very slowly. So the resin comes in and it fills up all those gaps with the black resin. Tape up both ends, roll it every 20 minutes whilst it's drying, just to make sure you're not going to get any voids.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it. You cut into it, give it a nice polish on the edge, and they generally always come out well. You'll get some where you may have bubbles inside, but if you've gone too quick with the vacuum, that's generally the reason for that. And I just think it gives a nice sort of finish to a knife. So I still use mechanical fixings as well, such as Corby bolts, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But I like to put a mosaic pin as well. I think it just sort of blurs that line between something, like a fine jewelry and a tool,
Yeah.
And I think if you're charging, a couple of $100 for a knife, people want, see that extra sort of mile, really. And people generally like them a lot. So yeah, I like making them.
Cool. So that's the last question, Sean. It's up to you if you want to go down that route or.
Sure, why not? Have you ever thought about competing in a blade sports competition?
No. I find that strange, and I think it's a culture thing where, like American culture with guns and knives are very different to a sort of European culture. But I say that, but I now live in a very rural part of France. We're sort of right in the middle of France. And it's very much a sort of rural farming community, and everybody carries a knife here, which I was quite shocked with to begin with. So yeah, with regards to the culture, I suppose I've moved into a place where knives are culture. But yeah, I mean, we wouldn't see any blade sports around here. No way. Again, like watching things like Knife or Death. Is Knife or Death? Have I called it something?
That's right.
It is Knife or Death. It's fun to watch. But I can't see myself doing that. And again, it's not the kind of knife that I make anyway.
Right.
I'd be heartbroken if I saw somebody trying to cut through rope with one of my chef knives. That's not its purpose, So the big talk around our neck of the woods is that Blade Show is coming up, and we are planning to attend in Atlanta. And I was wondering, do you have any plans to make an international trip to go to the Blade Show? Hoping so. So we chatted, myself, Jeff and Morocco, and with a couple of our sponsors about maybe even doing some sort of show as well. So we've looked into hiring venues over the weekend, and maybe having some sort of evening of something going on. Nothing's confirmed yet, and having 2 babies in the house has sort of thrown spanners into the works a little bit. But if I can if my wife allows me, I will be going. But whether we do something there as well, I don't know. But I've never been. So I think it would be real fun to go to and speak to a lot of people who I chat with online, and listeners of the show, listeners of your show. I think it could be fun. But there is something very similar here in France every year called Coutelier.
Okay.
In Thiers, and Thiers is quite a famous sort of knife making village here in France, where the Laguiole knives and so on are all made. And that's quite a big event. So I'll be going to that again this year. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to jump on a plane and come over to Blade as well.
Awesome. Nice. Well, we hope to see you there. Yeah. Sean and I will be kicking around the show, and we'll have a camera and microphones ready to talk to people. So if we see you there, we're definitely going to have to grab you.
Bring hot wings.
Well, that's it. That's all we got for questions. Anything else?
Great stuff.
You got any questions for us?
So what knives are you making? What's your style? What are you trying to achieve?
What would you call them?
Well, we originally were calling them Bowie knives. They're right over there on the floor if you want to grab them, Sean, in the box. Yeah, they're a Bowie style, is at least how we started them. They've kind of become their own thing now that we've started forging out the handle shapes and that sort of thing. But let's see if we can show them what we got here. So which one
is that? Next weekend, working on the handles.
So yes, this one's is this one mine?
Yeah,
this one's mine. Can you see that?
Nice shape.
It's very nice. Together, we are still learning, so it's not bad. And then which one's yours? This one, right? Is that yours, Sean?
No, I think that's the other one.
No, this one is the
because it's bigger.
One. Yeah, this one's Sean's.
Just claim the better one, whichever one's better.
That's the one I'm working on.
Yeah, this is Sean's. And then this one is the one that basically we're giving to people to show us how to do this, right? So every time we go, we have this one as the model example knife. So we've had Theo Naz, who was a 2-time Forged and Fire champion. He started this with us. And then Ryan Brewer was another Forged and Fire guy that was on the Spicy Mike episode of when he won Forged and Fire, actually. He helped us do the handles and normalizing. And then we're also going to be working with Matt Berry, who is just like a recent Forged and Fire champion.
Yeah.
And we're going to start grinding these things probably in a few weeks. So they're coming together now. We kind of sat on them for a while, but
yeah, progress.
Nice. Yeah. So what started the show? Are you just big fans of the TV show, and you thought you did the podcast, or is it knives always been an interest for you guys?
Yeah. Well, we had the equipment from the podcast we used to do, based on a mobile game.
Yeah.
Then it kind of fizzled out, and
we had built this whole studio for this really stupid podcast that we did for a while, and then it was sitting here once that died out, and then Teresa's dad
was like, "Oh, there's this show. It's so much fun. You should watch it on History Channel." So we started watching it. We went to a mutual friend's band play.
Yeah.
And then we realized that Sean also watched the show on occasion.
And said, well, maybe we should do something with it.
It was like I did one Google search, and there was no other content out there besides what History Channel was putting out. And there was like a few little videos from guys that were on the show, but not much. I was like, this is kind of an untapped market. So we figured we'd try it out. And that's kind of what led us down this route. And it was only after a couple episodes that the people that were on the show started catching wind and contacting us, and that's how we started getting into the interviews and things. So
yeah,
I'm guessing they were probably searching and trying to see if anything else was out there too.
Yeah, so then like we said, I mean, the show isn't really much of a platform to get people's names out there. So what you guys do then is great, because then they've got their voice. Then they can then talk about themselves and what they get up to. Yeah, it's great. But have you been surprised with the amount of people sort of within the community? I thought what I did was very sort of making knives was very niche. There can't be many people doing this. Started the podcast and it's just like, poof, there's all these people. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I still kind of think that way. But then I'm always constantly surprised at how big the community is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how close it is. A lot of these people that we're talking to aren't far away from us.
But there's like different pockets, I think. I mean, every state in the U.S. probably has their own people that make knives. But like for some reason, New England, there's quite a bit within a few states together that they can all drive around and work together. And then you have the the South guys, like the Tennessee guys, and that sort of thing. And then there's the West Coast contingent, which is almost like a little different game of what they're working on, but it's all over the place. So like everybody has their own style. So we happened to meet a bunch of people from all over the country when we went down to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, for the grudge match, and that was just maybe 30 Smiths or so that were all Forge and Fire guys. But it like just hearing about them and the work they're doing and kind of getting introduced to the world that way was a shock.
And they're all very welcoming, and everyone wants to help each other out, and it's
for example, Jason Knight was one of the first people that found us, and like he's one of the hosts of Forge and Fire for a while, and he was, he's got all these people that want to buy his stuff, and he randomly messaged us one day and said, "What do you guys do anyway?" And so we've had a lot of fun, and we've gotten to meet a lot of.
I'm gonna go check on the girls because we heard a noise.
Okay. Why don't we wrap it up? All right.
Bye.
So.
Bye.
So thanks again for coming on with us. It's been a blast. We can finally say we've completed the trifecta of Knife Talk hosts.
All three of us.
We spanned the ocean.
Yes.
We laid the groundwork.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For others to come.
Exactly. The satellites are out there. We've set them up ready. You can use them again now. Even for Toilet Talk. You can get the world famous plumbers for Toilet Talk.
Yeah,
too.
expect a lot of people to start reaching out to you now that we've established this channel, this communication channel.
Well, we just wanted to say,
guys, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, and
thank you for coming on.
I'm a fan as well, so it's good.
Awesome.
It's all good.
Fantastic. Thanks again for coming on with us, and we will say Chop Knives is where they can find you on Instagram or chopknives.com.
That's it. Yes. Yep.
And Knife Talk, of course. Always search for Knife Talk podcast.
Knifetalk.net.
Yes.
That's the one. Yes.
Yeah.
.com was gone. .com was gone, obviously.
It says it right here, knifetalk.net. Yeah. Become a member of the Right Angle Grinder community if you can.
Well, be careful. Be careful.
We've got the chairman. We've got the chairman of the community there now. He's wearing his t-shirt. But seriously, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
You too. You have a good one.
Cheers then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Haha, you got the t-shirt.
Of course.
The t-shirt.